Hello, my name's William Tobin. I was born in Manchester uh, and I've lived all over the world. Um, as a baby, I was taken for 2 years to the United States. Then the rest of my upbringing was in England. As a student, I went to the United States for a summer and worked as a garbage man in a Jewish holiday camp in upstate New York, and was sufficiently impressed by the States to go there for graduate study in Wisconsin. After that, I returned to the United Kingdom, to Scotland, where I was for 3 years and met a French woman who is now my wife. Following Scotland, Mrs. Thatcher was reducing opportunities for lots of us. I followed Mr. Tebbett's injunction to get on your bicycle and went to France for a while, for 5 years, where I married my my then girlfriend. We migrated to New Zealand. I was there for, all told, for about 20 years, but my wife wished to return to France. There was a period of several years where, in fact, I spent half my year in France and half in New Zealand before retiring to France, and I'm in France now as I speak to you. All of this in my life, or much of this in my life, would not have been possible without EU freedom of movement, and my heart weeps for the youngsters in the future who will not have the relatively easy road that I had. Well, I don't want to pretend moving between countries is easy, but there were no administrative complications, or at least none that were fundamental, between France, for me as a British citizen, because of first of all, the common market, and then later the European Union. Now, one of the things that greatly grieves me about Britain having left the European Union on the 31st of January this year is that all of a sudden I am now a foreigner in France. We all know, I think, how it's very different being with friends and visiting and living with friends, and being at home. Well, the loss of my European citizenship with Brexit has meant that I'm no longer chez moi ici en France. This is no longer part of my political union, my political area. I'm a foreigner in this country in a way that I wasn't before, and I very much regret now not being at home anymore because of Brexit. Now, the United Kingdom is a democracy, but it's a pretty ropey democracy. I saw in New Zealand how politics was revitalised by the introduction of proportional representation in the 1990s. 7 million people in the UK are unable to vote at the moment, although I think they ought to be able to vote. There are people like me. There are foreigners who are living permanently in the UK, or many foreigners who are living permanently in the UK, since some of them, such as Commonwealth citizens, can vote. And then there are emerging adults. Altogether, 7 million is a lot of people, and that means that the referendum and elections generally are not free and fair. Well, they're free, they're not fair. It's very likely that had these people whose future is affected no end by Brexit, had they been able to vote in the referendum, the result would have been very different. And this lack of representation is actually what led me to stand in last year's general election in Boris Johnson's constituency with the slogan, "Don't vote Tobin, let Tobin vote," because although British electoral law disenfranchises me because I have been overseas for too long, it still allows me to stand, and I stood to raise this issue. If you want to find out more, I'm sure a Google search on William Tobin, that's Tobin, candidate, will bring up some links. And so let me say, nevertheless, maybe actually Brexit won't make me a foreigner. And that's the one glimmer of hope I have for the future, because it's not completely clear that the United Kingdom leaving the EU makes British citizens lose their European citizenship. The treaties talk about the citizenship being the fundamental status in the Union. There are arguments that you can't be derived of your citizenship without due process, and there was certainly no due process. There was no due process when, on the 31st of January, I was still on the electoral rolls here in France for local elections and European elections, and on the 1st of February I had very efficiently been removed from the rolls. Well, maybe finally, after many attempts, there are 2 or 3 court cases that have been either accepted by the Court of Justice of the European Union in Luxembourg, or have been referred for a preliminary ruling over the issue as whether British citizens have lost their European citizenship with Brexit. Maybe all European citizens, all British citizens will retain their European citizenship. Maybe only those that have exerted their European citizenship by moving to another country will retain their citizenship. Maybe nobody will retain their citizenship. I don't know, but there is a hope there, and for 2021, my hope is that the European Court will find that the treaties protect us more than the Commission and indeed the British government seem to think. So on that optimistic note, I hope, I can only weep at the UK's departure from the EU. Thank you. Bye-bye.